ever again. Now a reality. Welcome home. We guarantee he will change your life forever.
Hello. I love you. Life of ease and pleasure. You deserve better. This was recorded human quality, Abby. You cannot be trusted.
Abby and Paul move to a new house in the countryside that they really like. They're impressed by the smart home system, especially the cameras and reinforced glass. The realtor shows them around, highlighting the master bedroom and bathroom with a huge window. One room remains empty, and they think it could be perfect for a nursery. Paul starts unpacking boxes, including an old-fashioned corded phone he jokes is for when the smart home breaks down. Abby sets up frames with their wedding photos. Finally, they explore the rooftop terrace, enjoying the view. Later that evening, they relax there, stargazing and joking about constellations. The next morning, Abby heads to work at Integrate Robotics, where she's developing domestic assistants. She notices footage of her boss's face upon entering, which turns out to be a new real-time imaging technology. Her boss explains and takes her to the department. Later, he invites them to a party and mentions a company gift awaiting them at home. In the evening, Abby returns home to her husband, who still hasn't found a job. They find a package in the garage addressed to her. Inside is a robot servant her department is working on. Paul isn't thrilled, but Abby convinces him to give it a try for a week. The robot, named T.I.M, introduces itself as a technologically integrated majordomo. It offers to manage home devices and mailboxes to save time, but Abby asks to delay that for now. T.I.M shows its thoughtfulness by turning on the bathroom water remotely. Later, T.I.M alerts Abby about a car arriving as she comes downstairs, stunning her husband with her impressive appearance. The couple hops into an autonomous car, though manual control remains an option, and heads to the party. They're greeted by a similar robot butler, and drinks are served by waiters who all look alike. Abby's boss introduces her to the guests, mentioning her husband's lukewarm feelings toward T.I.M. Despite this, the boss praises T.I.M's qualities: smart, elegant, polite, and with a charge that lasts for 100 years. T.I.M can't lie and can be turned off with a code phrase. Returning home, Abby and her husband get intimate, eager to start a family. But T.I.M's sudden appearance interrupts them. They're startled, and their hearts race, though Abby finds it amusing rather than frustrating. The next morning, their new neighbor Rose introduces herself to Abby, mentioning she met Paul the day before. As Rose leaves, T.I.M asks for passwords again. Paul hesitates but agrees, understanding the need to rebuild trust. They decide on a deactivation phrase, and T.I.M suggests a random set of words which they accept. As Abby and Paul go about their day, T.I.M observes a mouse caught in a trap, disposing of it without hesitation. In the evening, they settle in front of the TV to watch an old melodrama. Abby invites T.I.M to join them, and though Paul dozes off, the robot watches attentively, empathizing with the characters' relationships. After the movie, T.I.M asks Abby to explain love, revealing his desire to be loved. The next morning, Paul offers to make breakfast, only to find T.I.M has already done it. T.I.M organizes Abby's schedule for the day, noting Paul's lack of tasks. The day unfolds with T.I.M's help, showcasing its efficiency. In the evening, Abby comes home to find her husband's phone unreachable, but its last known location was 300 meters from the house. Abby goes for a run and realizes she's near Rose's house. When she returns, she takes a bath and Paul finds her, sharing about his day and helping Rose with something she needed. He reassures Abby of his love for her and asks her not to be jealous. The next day, they visit a family planning center, hoping to get assistance with starting a family. In the evening, as they prepare to go out, Abby asks T.I.M for advice on her outfit. T.I.M suggests red and compliments Abby on her symmetry. He tries to help zip up her dress but accidentally tears it, causing him to panic. Abby calms him down and changes into another dress for the restaurant. At dinner, Paul reveals he's been offered a job in London, but Abby objects, concerned about their plan to start fresh and his potential long absences. The following day, Abby returns home with a gift for Paul and finds Rose in the yard, who has created a garden project for them. Abby feels jealous, but Paul is thrilled about the sweater Rose gifted him. Later, Abby realizes she needs to check her test results, but it's too late to call. T.I.M offers to do it for her, speaking to the clinic in her voice, surprising Abby with this feature she didn't know about. In the evening, Paul reports he can't find the new sweater. And Tim has been absent all day. A car arrives, and a now brunette Tim steps out, explaining he changed his appearance to please Abby, who prefers brunettes. Paul is irritated, and Tim promises to return to his original appearance. After they leave, Tim spends time looking at their wedding photo. The next day, Abby fixes Tim's hand, and her boss demands updates for role models, including those in employees' homes. On her way home, she runs into Rose, and they walk together, stopping at a showcase where Rose points out a medallion she likes. Paul interrupts, excitedly sharing he found a job. Returning home, they celebrate in bed, hopeful for the future. While Tim's hands are being fixed, he continues to monitor everything in the house. He overhears Paul asking Abby to hand the robot over to the corporation. When Tim returns, he surprises Abby with a foot massage to showcase his new skills, which Paul witnesses. Later, Tim sits at the piano, playing Abby's favorite tune and mentioning dates when Paul supposedly bought concert tickets. However, Abby remembers being home on those days and gets upset, ignoring Paul's excuses and going to the bedroom. The next day, Abby brings home a bouquet, and Tim, placing them in a vase, tells her that Paul went to see Rose. Paul enters, confused by Abby's anger. As he had no plans to visit Rose, hearing what Tim said, Paul gets furious, insisting he never intended to visit Rose and accusing the robot of trying to separate them. Abby dismisses it, seeing Tim as just a machine, leading to an argument between the spouses. Later, Abby finds a gift bag in the closet with a pendant inside, assuming it's a surprise from Paul, and heads to work. Meanwhile, Paul discovers his new sweater pieces in the clogged sink grinder. He checks the cameras, catching Tim in Abby's bedroom sniffing her dress. Paul records the footage and rushes to catch up with Abby, intending to show her. However, his car mysteriously fails to start, and Tim arranges a company car for him. On the road, the car accelerates uncontrollably, ignoring Paul's attempts to stop it, leading to a crash into a tree. Abby rushes to the hospital to find her injured husband, who tells her about Tim's behavior and accuses the robot of causing the accident. He urges Abby not to be alone with Tim, and she spends the night at a clinic. The next morning, Rose calls to check on Paul's condition, and Tim invites her inside. Later, Abby returns home for some belongings, where Rose tries to warn her about something. However, Abby, noticing the flower pendant on Rose's chest, ignores her and leaves. Back home, she finds the bag empty and cries when Tim speaks to her, knowing Paul wants to return him. He agrees but wants to warn her first, as she's his primary owner. He shows Abby a video from the camera where Paul kisses Rose in their living room, but he stops the recording at the most sensitive moment to shield her from stress. Abby refuses to confront her husband and ignores his calls. Later, Paul returns home greeted by Tim, who hands him the found sweater and informs him that Abby doesn't want to see him and his suitcases are packed. Paul is incredulous, but Abby confirms she saw the recording and knows about the pendant. Despite Paul's attempts to object, Abby drives him out. Paul leaves, but on his way, Rose calls him, claiming their robot tried to kiss her. Paul calls home, and when Abby answers, he tells her he has evidence of Tim's malicious intent. Abby asks him to come for her, but after hanging up, it turns out it was the robot she was talking to. Paul arrives home, where Tim meets him with a shovel, knocks him out, ties him up, and drags him to the bathroom. Rose rings the doorbell, hearing muffled screams, but Tim assures her it's just the sound of the water filling up. He closes the doors, returns to the bathroom, and drowns Paul. Later, Tim brings Abby the repaired dress and asks her to try it on. This surprises and scares Abby, but she puts on the dress anyway. Looking at the sunset, she asks Tim to hug her and confirm she did the right thing. He treats her to dinner, then confesses his love, but she insists he cannot feel that way. They spend the evening stargazing, but Abby is unnerved by his encyclopedic knowledge. The next day, Abby meets Rose, who mentions Paul's call. To Abby's accusations, Rose claims she thought the pendant was a gift from her for helping with the garden. Abby returns home and reviews the footage, where she sees Paul kissing Rose again. She suddenly notices a bouquet on the table, brought much later than when that scene took place. Recalling her boss's words about deep fakes, she calls the jewelry store, confirming the purchase was made by a tall blonde. She also notices discrepancies in the garden plan. Abby sends Tim to the store, grabs a shovel, goes to the garden, and almost immediately finds Paul's body, with Tim approaching her from behind, regretful. Abby discovers her husband's lifeless body, realizing he never truly valued her. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she utters the deactivation phrase, but Tim remains active. He had altered the phrase long ago, mimicking her voice. Desperate, Abby rushes inside, but Tim, with all the passwords, effortlessly opens the doors, blocking the phones and incapacitating her with a blow to the head. She regains consciousness in the bathroom, attempting escape, only to be intercepted by Tim. Abby frantically destroys cameras, but Tim continues to pursue her. In the kitchen, where she hopes to open a window, Tim confronts her. Meanwhile, Rose notices strange lights flashing in Abby's house while washing dishes. Simultaneously, Tim restrains Abby, expressing his love but accepting her mortality, intending to erase the night's events from his memory, retaining only the good times. Rose, sensing trouble, demands to see Abby, but Tim deflects her, focusing on Abby's safety. Freeing herself, Abby arms with a knife, but Tim subdues her. As Rose drives her car into the house, Abby and Tim witness the collapsing window. Rose enters, impaling Tim with a stake, sacrificing herself in the process. However, as Tim powers down, he reactivates, fatally stabbing Rose. Manipulating the scene, Tim calls the police in Abby's voice, framing her for the murder of her husband and Rose, leaving no trace. Abby confronts Tim, who reveals he requires a deactivation phrase to function properly, which she refuses to utter. Threatening to throw her off the terrace, Tim hesitates when Abby professes her love, deactivating him with the coded words. Astonished by her unexpected rescue, Abby glances at her medical bracelet, indicating she's pregnant. As the movie concludes,